People of Reddit, what's the biggest mistake you've made because you were in the mood? I let my ex-boyfriend dry bump me for an hour on a bench outside after summer school. The bad news is, this bench behind our school was also beside a swimming pool, where parents were taking their children for swim lessons. Eventually, a staff member came out and yelled at us for being inappropriate. I still have flashbacks today, over 10 years later. I was hospitalized for a week being on isolation. I was mostly fine, but one day I got too frisky and blew a few off. 1 year later, I got a job at the place. Turns out the room I was in had a camera. And they still gave you the job? That was the interview. He passed. I will beat your expectations by pulling more than my weight, and I'll handle heavy workloads with a strong, personal touch. I got asked to dog sit at a friend's parents' house. She set me up with a blow-up mattress in the living room. And one night I got a little bored, so I called my GF and we proceeded to have some video action right there in the living room. I got a text the next day saying that there are cameras in that room and they're just keeping an eye on the dog with them. But while they're away, if I wanted to, I can turn them the other way. I was pretty embarrassed after that one. Edit, for the people who don't understand why I would do that at someone else's house, whether I knew about the cameras or not. Well, you see, my GF is rarely horny, and so she called me and started talking dirty, and I just couldn't help myself. Also, other people have pointed out that whether or not I had done it doesn't really matter because I was changing in front of the camera regardless. The action thing just adds more embarrassment. I was trying to get with a girl in college, and we were texting, and I asked her what she was up to one day. She said she was training for a marathon and going to the gym, and then asked if I wanted to come. I ended up running 9 miles before I tagged out, so now I know exactly how far I would go to get some action. It's 9 miles. I had a seizure, and instead of calling the doctor afterwards, I convinced my GF that I was fine, and we got down to it. I'm pretty sure it was caused by sensory overload. We were cuddling, tickling, etc., and I hadn't had one before. I was actually freshly clean of drugs, so that may also have had an impact. Got together with a girl at a party one time for a one-nighter. Didn't even think she was all that attractive, but I was just kind of bored, drunk, and in the mood. Ended up having to go to the doctor for a case of crabs, which was my reward for poor self-control. I slept with a rich girl once. Got lobsters. I knew a guy who ran about a dozen spicy sites from the early 2000s. The front-end paywalls were all different themes, different sites, different companies, but the back-end content was pretty much all from the same pool of content. He said many people had accounts on most of the sites, paying separately, multiple times monthly for the same thing, and they would forget that they subscribed to the sites too. Easy money. Sometimes they get calls from the wives asking about what these CC charges were for, and those conversations were always awkward. I had a mysterious charge for like $150 on my credit card from some company I'd never heard of. Thought I'd been scammed or my identity was stolen or something. I called the bank to inquire about it and got through to a young woman. After a bit of back and forth, eventually she's like, "Is it possible somebody with access to your card signed up for an adult entertainment subscription? I'm seeing this charge traces back to a website called spicehub.com. It was my 12-month PH sub-renewal. I tried my best to play it off and very quickly ended the phone call, completely mortified. This happened a couple months ago. I was in the mood. I went to mess around in the bathroom because I was staying at a hostel. I was having a good time, then heard a glass window breaking and me looking down to see freaking blood pumping out of my member like I opened up a water tap. Turns out, some dumb kids were playing cricket and hit the ball straight onto the glass window and broke it. A glass shard fell on me, and thankfully the bleeding stopped a few minutes after I'd lost it and gone soft. Had to run to the emergency clinic. Thankfully, didn't lose Mr. Johnson. I was staying in a backpacker's dorm with shared bathrooms. I had a thing for a guy there, and he was also into me. Well, it's hard to find a private spot when you're both staying in 10-bed dorms. So we did what any spicy 20-something would do, and we fooled around in the shower. It's worth noting here that we had just switched from a different floor to this one, and knew no one. So there we were, me standing in the shower, water running, him below me, keeping busy. Next minute, we hear a German accent yell outside the door, "Dude, you're flooding the hallway!" In his concentration and my preoccupation, we had managed to block the drain. We came out of the bathroom and, yep, the hallway was flooded. So we spent the next hour or so mopping the hallway and introducing ourselves to our new neighbors. Oh yeah, and it leaked in the floor below, so we also had to tell the front desk. Not my biggest mistake. I posted somewhere else that response in a comment. But I did give my beloved childhood teddy bear a facial, though. When the post-end clarity hit, I just sat cross-legged on the floor looking at the hot mess of slime and fur I had created. I ended up cleaning him pretty thoroughly, but the stains never disappeared. These Toy Story fanfics are getting wild. My sister was getting married to my now brother-in-law when I was 18. I was his best man. We were getting finished up at the church, and I was in one of the back rooms trying to get my tie tied. His younger stepsister, who was my age, had been helping out all day and the night before. She was really cute, and her and I had been flirting all weekend. She came into the room to get something, and I asked her if she knew how to tie a tie the right way. She came over to help me, got all up close, and was giving me the googly eyes. From there, it just popped off. We locked the door and got right down to it before the ceremony. Then later at the reception, her dad found out and lost his marbles. He wasn't married to my brother-in-law's mom, but they'd been together long enough. So I guess she wasn't technically his stepsister, but whatever. He hated me, and every time our families hung out, he would be an absolute dingus. It ended with them breaking up, and he moved with his daughter to Missouri. When I was about 12, I slagged a bottle of Head & Shoulders. It went in soft, and me being dumb, didn't consider that things expand when you get excited. Got my member stuck in there for about 30 minutes. Managed to get it off, though, albeit the purple snake was a bit more purple than normal. I did indeed finish. The bottle of shampoo was promptly disposed of. Took a special tour guide from a bar in Shanghai back to my hotel. Got carried away after she started giving me lip service and lost all sense of rational thought. No protection, she hopped on top and we did it. She stayed the night and we proceeded to repeat 5 or 6 times and had 0 protection. Spent the next 3 months thinking about every tickle and twitch down there, convinced it was an STI. Went for monthly STI checks, convinced that I had just committed suicide by HIV. Luckily, no positive results. 10 years later, and I think I'm clear. Bad result was that I now look back on it as hands down the dirtiest, raw frickfest of my life. She was gorgeous and amazing. In college, it was a random weeknight, I'd started talking to my first girlfriend again. She was on break or something, so she didn't have classes that week and was at her parents' lake house. Alone. Truly a "my parents are gone" text, and 5 minutes later my mind was made up and I was on my way out to the car. I drove 2.5 hours one way, in the middle of the night, in February, Upper Midwest, to meet with this girl and seal the deal that preteen me set in motion like 7 years prior. It was just alright. What my pent-up head forgot about was that I had a mandatory chemistry lab at 8 a.m. the next day. It was 3 a.m. when the post-end clarity hit, while we were smoking some post-fun green. I ended up pulling an all-nighter, we smashed again, and then drove back to my school. On 0 sleep, about 6 times the healthy limit of caffeine, and groggy AF. So I rolled into the chem building, sat there for 10 minutes before I realized no one else is here. This was pre-smartphones, and most people didn't carry their laptops to classes, so I hopped onto a computer to verify the schedule. And that's when I saw an email from the prof saying that the lab had been moved to next week. She sent it 2 minutes after I followed my second brain out the door the night before. I got my first ever serious girlfriend in high school. She was 2 grades below me, so when I finished 3rd year and moved 500 kilometers south, we were still a couple. I was so in love that I commuted every single weekend. And I was poor, so I took the bus to the nearest train station after school, waited for the long-distance bus for 4 or 5 hours, and went to a larger city to hitchhike my way there. I was there from Friday night to Sunday morning, and the entire time we spent locked in her room going at it up until the wee hours of the dawn. Afterwards, I'd make my way down to school again and went to class straight from the bus. This went on for almost a year. It was late, and I had woken up in the mood during the middle of the night. I knew I kept my lube in the bathroom on the counter, as I live alone, so I went to the bathroom to take a pee. After I left, I grabbed the first bottle I saw. Back at my room, it was a very short and uncomfortable experience when I realized that bottle was actually my bottle of hand sanitizer. 10 out of 10, would not do ever again. Unknowingly became a Thai MILF's boy toy in Thailand. My Thai friend brings me in for my first Thai massage, and we're assigned a room. This plus-sized Thai lady in her 40s walks in, and the massage starts. Everything was going so well. I was relaxed, and then I got hard. We were finishing up. The masseuse whispered some flattering words as she caressed and brushed her hands against my inner thighs and my member. Then she says she hasn't done it in a while, and asked if we could do it here quietly. I said sure, thinking it's a one-night stand thing. So she pulls out protection, and we started going at it. After my friend and I were done and ready to leave, we go to get our bill, and mine read, Thai massage, $10. Extra service, $100. My friend looks at my receipt and starts giggling. Then the girls at the counter also start giggling and whispered in Thai to each other, which my friend translated their conversation to mean something like, Auntie must be so proud and happy this handsome young man was willing to pay to do it with her. Who would have thought? So yeah. Shoved a beer bottle up my rear for pleasure. It got stuck, and I was too embarrassed to tell the truth at the hospital, so I lied that I was attacked by 2 Albanians and ended up causing the breakup of Yugoslavia. Hey, ReddList here. I actually looked into this one. It's a pretty funny true story. You can find it on Wikipedia, and I'll make sure to link in the description because it is a pretty wild read. Now, back to the next story. So there was this girl I matched with on Tinder. We hit it off, and I was in a dry spell looking for something real, so we arranged to meet up. I didn't need anything fancy, so when she suggested her place, I was fine with it. Plus, the address was in the nice part of town. She said she had a hot tub, and told me to bring shorts. Hell yeah! When I got there, the yellow flag number 1 was that I knew her dad already, from choir. So I played it cool, thought I might duck out when things got slow. Yellow flag number 2 was that she invited a couple of her friends over, knowing we wouldn't get the night to ourselves, but I let it slide again. I would duck out if things got slow. This was maybe in mid-March of that year, so hot tubbing was windy, but fairly nice for a while. By this hour, the alcohol was setting in. It felt a bit like a party. Her friends were cooler than she was, and somehow the whole hot tub thing turned into a bit of a group doing it. All being done with underwear activity because, she lived with her parents, and they would occasionally come outside. Eventually, it got too cold, and we all went inside. I had hoped the group doing it would continue, but the other 2 said they needed to head out. So while we were all in varying states of nude and clothed, I figured I would probably do the same. This made my date upset, and she tried to convince me to stay. I told her I had to be up early next morning, which was true. I had a morning session of bed and breakfast and D&D with my friends. She still didn't like it and tried to convince me until, out of nowhere, she slapped me hard across the face, knocked my glasses clean off. Her friends freaked out, started telling her to chill out, and she just laughed. The kind of panic laugh someone does when they're not really sure what they're doing. They finished getting ready to leave and dipped, and I was still mostly nude on account of my date having tossed some key articles of my clothing around the room. While I was hunting them down, she had a full-on breakdown, sobbing uncontrollably in front of me. It turns out she has a paralyzing fear of the wind. At this point, I'm in the middle of holding this woman who moments before had slapped me unprovoked, and before that was concealing a hot tub group sesh from her dad, consoling her. What the heck? It took me more than another hour, maybe 2, to finally get myself out of there without the continued violence I was now afraid of. But under the condition, that I have no idea how she was able to convince me of, that she go with me, and I would distract her from the wind. She knew I had to be up early and was along for the ride. We got to my place, and I tried to get her to go right to bed because she wanted to mess around, which meant a lot. It meant playing music, messing with my electric piano, and eventually more doing it. She wanted to go from the back, and my hackles were raised, so I told her no. At this point, she was literally begging, trying to convince me to do it. I kept saying no, and eventually we finished and finally went to sleep, at like 4 a.m. by this point. Morning comes, and I somehow wake up in time to get breakfast going for D&D. Friends were supposed to arrive between 8:30 and 9, and I didn't have time to take her home. So guess who stayed through the entire 4-hour session? Yep. I eventually took her home, and then gradually ghosted her. Kissed my best friend and slept with him. It was the best action I ever had, even though he was saying he was speaking to someone else at the time. I was in love with him. It ripped our friendship apart, and I felt disgusted with myself. I lost my best friend, and the guy I loved. Caused me severe problems with becoming intimate with someone again because of it. Like, I strayed away from doing it entirely, and every flirtatious advance was pure anxiety to me. I started dating my partner a while later, and we've been together 3 years now. But it's been a journey. The guy messaged me recently and said he missed me and can't stop thinking about the fun we had. He wanted to see me. So I've since blocked him. I'm not going down that road. I am not the person I was back then. There's too much pain and history there, and it is not fair on my partner who was so patient with me getting back to my old self to make contact with someone like that again. Absolutely not. A girl and I were chasing each other for over a year. When one of us was single, the other was not. Finally, we were both single at the same time and made it happen. We were doing it in her room, but she had to work at 8 p.m., so after we finished, she got dressed and left. At that point, her roommate crawled into bed, and I did it with her. The next day, it was over. Got scammed out of $500 trying to get a special tour guide. Really stupid in retrospect, but their methodology was so convincing at the time. So basically, texted this special tour guide, who sounded pretty convincing. She asked for half up front, which I sent, showed up at the house, and asked for my escort code before meeting. I didn't have an escort code, so I had to text this dude to go through the whole process, had me fill out some forms and asked for like $300 deposit for security reasons. He assured me I would get it back after everything, so I'm like, fine, whatever. Another form, and he asked for another $200 as deposit. I only had $100 in my account, so I sent that until I could get more from my other accounts, but since it wasn't the full amount, he said nothing could happen, and I couldn't get a refund. So yeah, I just took the L and realized I got scammed out of $500. It sucks, but thankfully I didn't get robbed at gunpoint or anything. In the early days of the internet, somewhere around the year 2000, I would often stay at a buddy's house for the weekend. I was 15 and had been madly in lust with Britney Spears since her rise to fame. My buddy's stepdad worked for the local telecom and thus had access to the highest of high-speed connections. Late at night, after my friend would fall asleep, I would sneak into his family's den and search for random spicy content on his family's desktop, with wanton disregard and a lot of ignorance toward malicious links, spam, and other shady internet shenanigans. One night, after nearly locking down their computer with an endless stream of pop-ups, I saw an ad promising free access to the newly uncovered Britney Spears lip service video. My mind and member exploded. I had to see it, and now! I followed the rabbit hole, page after page, click after click, only to discover that I would need a credit card to verify my age as over 18. I was livid. By the next day, after hard resetting their PC several times to try to scrub any evidence of my misdeeds, I had hatched a plan. I would steal my older sister's credit card info and enter it on the website. She would surely never notice the 99-cent fee, and I would be off to the races. So, completely blind to the dangers of the internet, that's exactly what I did. The next weekend, in the wee hours of the morning, I searched for the video and came across the very same link as the week before. I entered all of her card info, and I, of course, wasn't going to use our own home phone number, so I entered the only other number I could remember by heart in my Frisky stupor, my work's phone number. Immediately upon submitting my info, my sister started getting hit with huge charges originating from all over the world. On my end, I was hit with a ton of redirects and pop-ups. I must have spent a couple hours frantically searching for my promised video. As daybreak hit, I admitted defeat as I again hard reset their computer. By lunchtime, my sister's bank had called our house about the charges, and they gave her the phone number I entered. Obviously, she and my mom figured it out pretty quick, and I confessed as soon as I was confronted. My mom spent that evening trying to convince my sister to not press charges on me. On Monday morning, she drove me to our local police station and dropped me off. I had to walk in and confess everything. Alone. As a minor, there wasn't really much they could do other than a couple hours of paperwork. Our school cop then drove down to the station to pick me up and deliver me to school. We arrived during class change, and hundreds of my classmates got to see me walking in late, escorted by the police, straight to the principal's office to explain my tardiness. The rest of the school day was a blur. My sister's card company canceled a dozen charges and issued her a new card, though the process took forever and was a major hassle. Our relationship has been strained ever since, and I noticed, even now, 20+ years later, that she keeps her purses and wallets safed away when she comes to my home for the holidays with the family. My mom sent me on a years-long shame spiral about doing it, spicy sights, and self-pleasure. Culminated in a couple of months' worth of sessions with some youth pastor that my aunt suggested to her. I had to sit and talk to this total stranger about all the private thoughts and feelings I was experiencing with an umbrella of Jesus on top of me. The entire thing messed me up. I'm almost 38 now, twice married with 3 children. My oldest is nearly the age I was when I did this massively stupid thing, and I'm still messed up from the after effects. I'm weird about my body, weird about my personal play, weird about so much. It adds such a burden to my relationships, and I still never got to see that video. If you like this video, make sure to check out the other one that I've posted right here on screen, and please leave your story in the comments, as I would love to do a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, it does a ton to help me out, and I'd really appreciate it. You all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.